Okay, so it's time for item 3, pages 5 and 6 from the foundational writing assignment. Of course, the first thing we want to do is get the context in question. I'm going to go ahead and let you read this on your own. This is a statement from a couple of different sources. They're not necessarily reliable and trustworthy sources, but these excerpts here from, I believe, social media do express the opinions of some truckers, of people who are long-haul drivers. And this is going to be used to connect to the context in a thought experiment that I'm going to give you to work with for your last argument in this assignment. It's very important that you hear what these people have to say in their own words. Now, you might take issue with what is said. But as in life, it's important to reflect intellectual empathy to understand that which you disagree with. So I want you to read this, even if you have strong negative emotions or feelings about what they say, because I need to have a sense that you do have the background information in the context, and you have that you have experienced the opinions that are in here. So it might take intellectual courage because you feel threatened by or get the ideas that are expressed in here. So you'll need intellectual courage to overcome that fear or sense of anxiety or dread in reading the opinions. And you'll need this so that you can have intellectual empathy. Intellectual empathy doesn't mean that you endorse or say that what they say is okay or tolerated. All it means is you can repeat back to them what they said and you understand why they said what they said. That doesn't mean you agree with what they said. But whether or not you agree with somebody, you first have to know what it is that you're agreeing or disagreeing with. So I want you to get this background information to get some opinions from some people who drive trucks, long-haul trucks. After you're done reading through all of this, then you should resume the video and follow what I have to say here. So just pause the video and read this. You're going to get a lot more out of the remainder of this video if you do so. This video is not going to be quite as long as the one for item 1 or have as many videos as item 1, but it's not going to be as short as the video for item 2. So it's going to be somewhere in the middle, and that's because I have to make sure that you understand how the thought experiment works as the prompt for the question that I ask of you. So we are going to read through some of this together to make sure you handle this correctly. The prompt and the question for item 3. Okay, so assuming you have already read all this, we are going to read through this together, and I might make some additional points of emphasis and iteration, so you might need to take some notes as we do so. So let me position my dot cam. Okay, so I'm going to start right here, and you can just follow along visually as I read aloud, and slowly. Okay, so some truck drivers claim that it is morally permissible for them to run over protesters if they, the truck drivers, sense their own lives are in danger. Citing a 1990s victim who was pulled out of his truck and critically injured by angry protesters. That's who they cite. That's the incident that they cite. They also claim it is morally permissible, if not morally obligatory, that they run over protesters who prevent them, the truck drivers, from delivering life-sustaining goods. Both justifications are focused on cases where protesters are blocking a road, street, or highway said truck driver is on or needs to use to deliver goods to a given destination. Now imagine the following scenario. So what I'm giving you here, and you should write that out to the side, is a thought experiment. Writing the word thought experiment is going to be very helpful for what I have to say later. In philosophy, by the way, we like to do thought experiments. Just like you can have physical experiments in science, you can have experiments that you do with just your mind in philosophy. So we need to carefully read through all of these details, because when you do your response for this last item, I have to have a sense that you kept all of these items in mind, and you actually should incorporate phrases from and information from these conditions. I'm not saying you have to incorporate all of this information, but you do need to incorporate the most relevant, useful information in your response to make your case. So let's go ahead and look at what those conditions are, and I'm sure you're going to want to read this with me now, maybe again afterwards, and then after constructing your response. Okay, so Let's go ahead and get started right here. Like I've said before, you can just follow along while I read aloud. So, you are a long-haul truck driver who has a shipment of a newly developed COVID-19 drug that cures those infected with COVID-19. So it's not a vaccine to prevent the infection or getting sick from COVID-19. It's for people who already have COVID-19 and they need a cure. And it's my thought experiment. Now you should say, but that's not true. That's not reality. That's not the way the thought experiments work. What we're setting up is something called a possible world in philosophy. And I'm asking you to use your imagination and to put your, sense of reality on hold for right now and imagine that all of these statements really are true and really are describing something actual. Okay, so moving on. This life-saving drug must be stored at minus 20 degrees. Did you know that that's the temperature at which, is it Moderna? I think it has to be frozen at that temperature. But of course, we're talking about a drug that cures COVID-19, not a drug that prevents you from getting too sick from it or sick at all from it. Your truck has enough energy to keep special refrigerators containing the drug operational for 2 more hours. Okay, so if I give you a piece of information in this thought experiment, in this imaginary world, it's crucial. Okay, all of this information has to inform the argument that you are going to construct in virtue of what we go over on page 6. So continuing on with crucial information. There are 100 children ages 2 years to 10 years old in a Dallas hospital who are on the verge of dying from the virus. They are waiting for you specifically and your truck to arrive with the drug. On top of that, your truck has the only allotment of the life-saving drug given to the city of Dallas. So this all takes place in Dallas. No other cities or states or countries are willing to spare any of their allotment. You are 30 miles away from the hospital and hence the children. If you don't get the cure to them, they will definitely die. They will do so within 2 hours of your reading this very prompt, let's say. Okay, so on top of that, another condition that I'm going to place on this thought experiment is that there's no such thing as miracles and prayers cannot work to keep the children from dying. I'm not telling you it's bad or wrong to have that. That's fine. You don't know if I'm religious or not, or if I'm a Christian or a Muslim or a Buddhist or Hindu. But for the purpose of this thought experiment, there's no such thing as prayer, and there's no such thing as a miracle. Okay. All right. So next set of conditions. You get to a point on Interstate 30 where you see 50 protesters blocking the main lanes of the freeway. The protesters are demanding an end to police brutality, so you see their signs and whatnot. The protesters range in ages from 18 to 60 years. I think I changed that. Did I change that? Hold on. Yeah, so I have from 18 to 60 years. Okay. You know what? I think on your version of this, I changed it, and it now says that the protesters range from age 30 to 60 years. I apologize for that. I'm realizing that I did not print the most updated version of this. Okay, we're good. So I just checked the version that I uploaded for you to download, and I had changed this to 30 to 60 years. Okay. Another condition. The protesters are blocking the next exit ramp in addition to the main freeway lanes. It is impossible to turn around to take the exit you just passed, as there is a traffic jam behind you and cement barriers or walls lining the freeway on both sides. This also means you cannot cross over to the other side of the freeway heading in the opposite direction. The walls are so high you can't even walk or jump over them. But on top of that, so here are some more missing conditions. So another condition that I want you to add to right here, okay, is that you cannot take the cure out of the refrigerators. Okay, so basically those refrigerators have to be placed inside special refrigerators in the hospital. So no human can carry them. If you try to carry the cure in your own hands, you're going to destroy it. Okay, so it's impossible, in other words, to it's impossible for a human being physically to take the cure to anyone or have it transferred in any way, because they have to stay in these heavy-duty refrigerators that have to be placed inside a special refrigerator in the hospital. Okay, so I think I have one other condition. There is not enough time to organize assistance in getting the cure to the children by any other means. So a helicopter, there's no time to organize a helicopter to, send down a bucket or to like get, some kind of device where it could pull up the refrigerators. There's no time for that. There's no time for any alternative way of getting the cure to the children. So basically what I'm forcing you to deal with is a dilemma. You have to respond the way that I've given you. So the dilemma is, do you run through the protesters, okay, who care about police brutality, or so that you get to the children who are going to die within 2 hours? Or do you allow children to die for 2 hours so that you don't run over the protesters? So let's go ahead and look at the prompt that I have formulated in writing. Given all of the conditions listed in our thought experiment, A through C, and of course elements A through C of our thought experiment have sub-elements, little I, little, lowercase Roman numeral I, and so forth. Do you think, so, right here, this is saying you have to pay attention to what I said on the second half of page 5, the thought experiment, the conditions. Do you think it would be morally permissible for you to run through the line of protesters? Your response must show careful attention to the conditions of the thought experiment. That is, your response should not ignore the context and specific details given with respect to the thought experiment I present on page 5. Furthermore, you may want to add this to your notes. You cannot change anything. So you can't change any aspect of our thought experiment, our possible imagined world. I am the one that gets to create the thought experiment because I want you to have to think through this dilemma, okay, as a dilemma, as given. All right, so of course now we're doing step 2, where you're actually constructing your paragraph in the form of an argument. Again, you generally know, right? You generally already know what these 2 parts are all about. The thing that I want to remind you of is that when you are giving reasons, okay, whether it's reasons for a definite position or reasons relevant to opposing conclusions, you need to make sure that the reasonee shows direct, explicit attention to the conditions given in the list of conditions here. So I do expect to see you lifting and borrowing from these statements. You can say, oh, I think it would be morally permissible for me to run through the protesters because, and then you should be explicit, 100 children could die if I don't. And then so pull other aspects from here that can help support your reasoning. Now, as with the other items, I do want you to be true to yourself. I do want you to tell me what you really think, but you have to do within the context given, within the prompts given, within the questions given, and whatnot. I'm trying to think, is there anything else that I want to say? You don't need to do a definition here, so there's nothing with respect to that with the missing requirement. Just make sure that you're showing a lot of direct, obvious attention to the conditions, pulling words from here to formulate the sentences or statements that comprise your logic. And that is all.